Guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. So guys, a Manny Pacquiao insider unboxing scene. It's an article been released that him beating Errol Spence would be the greatest win in welterweight history. And I know I made a video about this yesterday, but the reason why I want to talk about this is that there's been a lot of people that say you can't really talk about history because history is too long. There've been a lot of great welterweight wins. You know, Sugar Ray Leonard had some great wins at welterweight. And there's been many Mayweather, Pacquiao himself, Mayweather. There's been other great fighters, you know, over the years that have had really good wins at welterweight. And let's be honest, can you really say it's the greatest win? Is it the greatest welterweight win in history? For me, it's not just the greatest win in welterweight history. It's the greatest win for me, probably up there. And I know people say, "Oh, well, no, you can't say that. There's been some." For me, it's one of the greatest wins ever. And a reason why I say that, and I've stayed very consistent on this, is that you cannot name me another fighter that was 42 out of his prime that beat another guy in his prime that's undefeated, that's unified. You cannot name me another fight, another win like that in the history of sport of boxing. Manny Pacquiao isn't tailored to win this fight. This fight isn't. If Manny Pacquiao wins this fight, he'd be going against the grain. He'd be doing something that isn't supposed to be done. Simple as that. If Manny Pacquiao beats Errol Spence, he would be doing something that he's not supposed to be doing. Full stop. He's not doing something which is expected for him to do. He's doing something that's not expected for him to do. He's not expected to beat Errol Spence. Full stop. So if anyone wants to argue about the fact that it's not the greatest win in welterweight history, for me, it's one of the greatest wins. Like, you couldn't name me a better win. Like, it's very difficult to name a better win than that. A lot of people say, well, Manny Pacquiao is not a legitimate welterweight. He's been at welterweight for a very long time, yes, but he's fighting at a very unnatural weight. He's not fighting at a weight that's suited to him. Manny Pacquiao would probably better suited at 140, maybe even 135. That's his body frame really is made for those weight classes. Manny Pacquiao is an unbelievable fighter. That's why there's only very few fighters that are able to fight at weight classes, right? And be successful at those weight classes where they're fighting way above their weight, way above. Only few fighters and the very special ones. Mayweather, Pacquiao, Canelo, we're talking about some of the greats. Though they're the only type of fighters that can fight above their weight class like that and comfortably win and dominate. Very few fighters in the history of boxing have been able to do that. And let's be honest, for me, both Pacquiao and Mayweather went up to welterweight. And I don't really think they were anywhere near as big as some of the guys at welterweight. Some of the guys were huge at welterweight, right? And they were dominating bigger men. They were dominating bigger, stronger men that went on to had a good career at 154. In Canelo's case, Canelo and Mayweather beating Canelo. Canelo's gone on to have a great career at super middleweight and possibly light heavyweight in the future. So these guys are exceptional, and they're not the norm. They're the exception. And Manny Pacquiao beating Errol Spence, I just can't think of another better win than that. It's very difficult when you think about it. A 42-year-old, a 42-year-old fighting a 30-year-old in his prime, undefeated, unified. If he beats him, I'm sorry, I just don't see another win in the sport of boxing that comes close to that. People say Sugar Ray Leonard and Hagler. Hagler was towards the end of his career. That wasn't a prime Hagler. And let's be honest, let's see how Manny wins this fight. A lot of people thought Hagler beat Sugar Ray. Many felt, you go online, Hagler won that fight. It was a very close fight. But regardless, the fact that Sugar Ray went up 2 weight classes and beat Hagler is a phenomenal feat, irrespective whether he just won or it was close, because you would expect a middleweight who's way bigger than Sugar Ray to beat Sugar Ray. But the thing is, Sugar Ray was a very intelligent boxer. And Sugar Ray knew that Marvin Hagler's love for the sport wasn't there, because he was sitting and having a meal with Hagler apparently, and he realized from Marvin Hagler sitting down with him on the dining table or wherever he's having lunch with him or wherever, maybe they're at a party or something, he realized that this guy has no longer the love for the sport. So we're talking about a guy that's not really got the love for the sport against someone like Sugar Ray Leonard. I know Sugar Ray Leonard was moving up, but Sugar Ray Leonard could move up. He was phenomenal. He moved up to light heavyweight and fought Donny Lalonde. So my point here is that Hagler was towards the end of his career. Now, I'm not saying Errol Spence might not be nowhere near the fighter Hagler is, but nevertheless, Spence is in his prime. He's hungry. Pacquiao's out of his prime. He's, Spence is a young, hungry champion. Pacquiao's an old lion that's on the way out. Let's be real about it. And I just don't see fighters get wins like this. I don't see fighters doing things like this. This would be a phenomenal feat, a phenomenal achievement. And I just don't think, I don't think people understand how big this would be if he was to pull it off. And when I speak to people and they say, no, do you know the history of boxing? It doesn't matter what the history of boxing is. This is up there as one of the greatest wins. I don't care what anybody says. You don't get stuff like this. You may get like a Bernard Hopkins at 50 fighting and win it, or 48 fighting and win it, but he's fighting guys, yes, at championship level, but none of the guys that Hopkins fought were top 10 pound for pound guys. They were all guys that, were decent level world champions. They weren't what we call killers, or what Steven would call a killer. Errol Spence is what I could consider is one of the best in the world right now, not just in his weight class, but in the world, period. Skills, he's one of the best. So I just don't think anyone can argue that this would be I'm not saying it's definitely the greatest, because that's a discussion and that's for argument. I definitely think it's in the argument, and I definitely think it's one of the best ever, because I can't think of a win. I can't think of a win in terms of a 42-year-old fighting a guy in his prime. I can't think of a better win than that. I can't think of anyone that's 42, not the fighter he was, fighting a guy young, fit, in his prime, and beating him. I can't. When we say Sugar Ray Leonard, Hagler, they were two guys. One guy was definitely at the end in Hagler, and Sugar Ray wasn't exactly at his prime either. So for me personally, I don't think do I think a Sugar Ray Leonard beating a Hagler is a better win than Manny Pacquiao beating Spence, at 42-year-old beating a young pound for pound top 5? Yes, because I think Errol Spence is in his prime. I don't think Hagler was at his very best. And again, with time, if Pacquiao was to win and Errol Spence was to go on and achieve greater things, then that win's going to look even better. It depends on how Errol Spence finishes his career as well. But at the minute, the way Errol Spence is viewed, he's viewed as something very, very special. Like, a lot of boxing fans are not even giving Pacquiao a chance in this fight. So when you think about the fact that Manny Pacquiao is such a huge underdog, how Errol Spence is rated in boxing, period, the fact that Manny's 42, I just don't see another fight. Like, the one that comes close, and the one that probably, for me, is the better win, is probably Ali Foreman. And I'll tell you why. Because a lot of people thought that Ali was going to get hurt in that fight. A lot of people thought that Ali shouldn't fight Foreman. Ali should stay well away from Foreman. This is dangerous. Ali could get hurt. I don't see the same kind of worry for Manny Pacquiao, because obviously Foreman was a heavyweight, a huge puncher, and he was knocking everybody out. He had knocked Fraser out in brutal fashion, and people thought, hang on a minute, this is a step too far for Muhammad Ali at this stage in his career. He wasn't the fighter he was. He didn't have the legs he had. And that's when he came out with the rope-a-dope, where he, stood on the ropes and, absorbed the punishment on the body. Didn't let Foreman really hit him up top, just hitting him a lot with the body shots, and Foreman tired out, and he ended up stopping fatigued George Foreman. But that for me comes close, because that was a prime George Foreman. That was a prime. I think that's the greatest win. For me, that's probably the greatest win of all time, just because I think Ali was past his best, and Ali came up with a master plan in how to beat George Foreman. So I would say that for me tops. That for me tops Manny Pacquiao's win over Errol Spence, just because of the fear that people had for Muhammad Ali going into that fight, because of the fact that George Foreman was such a big puncher. He was so dangerous and viewed so dangerously at that point. Muhammad Ali was a massive underdog in that fight, and no one was giving Muhammad Ali a chance. I do think there's a lot of people that are giving Manny Pacquiao a chance in this fight. And I don't think people view it as like, I do think it's a dangerous fight, but a lot of people don't really see it as dangerous. They don't think Spence is that big a puncher. They think Spence is solid, but they don't think, there's a lot of people that actually don't think that Spence is going to stop Manny. They just think that, you know, he may be too much and Manny may fatigue. But with Foreman, I think people just thought that he was going to knock Muhammad Ali out cold. I think that's what people thought. And they were just worried that he may get hurt, because Ali was out of his prime and Foreman was literally battering everybody. And I think there was a lot of people that were really worried for Muhammad Ali in that fight. And listen, rightfully so, because like I said, Foreman was a monster at that point. So, and he looked indestructible. Like, he just looked like a monster. But Muhammad Ali, like I said, was so smart. And most of these top level boxers, even Pacquiao, they're all smart. Pacquiao's not got the boxing IQ of Muhammad Ali, and not the same intelligence that Ali had. But Manny Pacquiao is very intelligent, but he has physical gifts, that hand speed, that foot speed. If that's still there, oh my goodness. I was speaking to one of my mates yesterday about this fight, who knows a lot about boxing, and he said that Manny Pacquiao in his prime would have dismantled Errol Spence. And he even says, I give him a good chance now. So he's in the same boat as me. He gives Manny Pacquiao a good chance now. And he said that in his prime, he would dismantle. So he's got the same kind of opinion as mine, that Manny would have beaten Errol Spence handily in his prime, and go as far as saying dismantled him. And I would also go as far as saying that right now, I think he has a chance. But a lot of people don't seem to think that. A lot of people seem to think that, nah, Pacquiao will get beat quite comfortably. I have a different view. But what do you guys think? I'd love to know your opinion. Do you think this would be the greatest win in welterweight history if Manny Pacquiao beats Errol Spence, according to reports? Is it the greatest win in welterweight history? Leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, guys. And guys, remember to please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.